Hello everyone and welcome to Talking Synths, unlucky episode 13.
Unlucky because I didn't get to do any research.
We'll see if it's unlucky or not. I'm Sam from Syntaur.
I'm Carlos.
And just a reminder, Syntaur is where you can get all the parts you need for repairing your keyboards. We try to stock parts for just about every keyboard that is out there. So Syntaur.com if you need parts. Let's see. Before we get rolling, we're also supposed to say if you have questions you'd like us to address or topics you'd like to hear us yak on about, send us an email at talkingsynths@syntaur.com. And then another thing we started doing is taking viewer submissions for our R&R series of videos, not rest and relaxation, but repair and restoration. So for instance, if you're repairing a volume pot on a EMU keyboard or something that you have, and you bought the part from us and you thought, hey, maybe I'll shoot some video of this. We sure encourage you to, because if you shoot that video and then you can submit it to us, we can do the editing, professional quality editing. We can, tweak everything just right. We can put it up on our YouTube channel where it'll get a whole lot of views, and a whole lot of EMU people that are wondering how to change their volume pot will be secretly thanking you, and your karmic bank account will literally skyrocket as a result. So if you're into shooting a little video, there's a page on our website that is, I think, syntaur.com/videos.
We can put it on the video.
Yeah, we'll put a thing up there. But yeah, you can find details on our site, or just send us an email at sales@syntaur.com. Okay, today's unlucky topic. No, it's not unlucky, right? I'm not superstitious, but I hear it works even if you don't believe in it. So today's topic, we're going to do a little more on oscillators, and we're going to kind of do a smorgasbord of the leftover oscillator kind of stuff. And there's one topic in particular that, from looking around on the internet, it seems like it's the most misunderstood synth topic.
I know I misunderstood it completely.
And that is Oscillator Sync. So if you've got a syncing feeling and you want to dive into Oscillator Sync, we're going to help you figure out what it is. So just like it says, one oscillator syncs to the other. So what does that mean? It means that when you sync oscillator 1 to oscillator 2, and so obviously you have to have a 2 oscillator synthesizer to do this, that means that oscillator 2 is going to play always at the exact frequency of oscillator 1, no matter what you do to oscillator 2. So I have a little handy dandy diagram here, just a triangle wave. So let's assume that oscillator 2 is set to a triangle wave, and here is one complete waveform. So there are 2 complete waveforms on this picture, and so the wave length is that right there. That's one wavelength. And so now let's say you have oscillator 1 and you're going to sync this oscillator to it. If oscillator 1's wavelength is shorter than this, let's say it's that amount there, then your waveform changes, because no longer is this a triangle wave. It goes up and then down in a triangle, but then it suddenly stops. And then it starts over right here and does its thing again. Let's say you shorten it to half the frequency, then you're just getting this up part of the triangle. So it's going, now your wave is doing that. And so when you're doing this, you're changing the wave shape of oscillator 2. And so let's say you take it all the way to here. If it's a fourth the wavelength of this triangle wave, then it goes up and then it goes back down, goes up, goes back down, and now you've turned this triangle wave into a sawtooth wave. And so that's the point of sync, is that you can change the waveform of Oscillator 2 based on what Oscillator 1 is doing. Maybe it's real hard to understand. So now we're going to give some audio demonstrations of it. So this is two sawtooth waves playing slightly detuned. So here's Oscillator 1. There's both. There's Oscillator 2 by itself. And so sync is off right now. And so what I'm going to do is turn sync on. The first thing you notice is now you don't have that detuned, warm, fuzzy sound.
The phasing.
Yeah. So it's a really crisp, clear kind of sound. Nothing special too much, but now I'm going to start messing with the frequency of Oscillator 2. So where we are now is we're synced to about this. So the waveform is basically just a triangle, or well, in this case it's a sawtooth wave. But now I'm going to start messing with the frequency of Oscillator 2. And so I'm going to start moving the point of which that wave starts over. And that's going to start changing the sound pretty dynamic, or pretty noticeably. So what I'm doing is just turning the frequency knob on Oscillator 2. And you can tell now it's got a real nasally, kind of edgy sound. A lot of sync sounds are real edgy to me, is how I would describe them. And that's where the cool business starts in. Not only where you are synced with your Oscillator 2, but where you're changing that frequency as you're syncing, and then you're getting some really cool motion. So that's really cool to me. And so you can, let's see, we're gonna send the mod wheel to Oscillator 2. That's not doing it. Oscillator 2. Oh, let's turn this. So now what I'm doing is I'm sending some LFO to control that frequency. Let me crank it up a little more, the speed. So now the LFO is changing the waveform of Oscillator 2 in a really cool way. So it's also cool if you have the capability to send an envelope to the frequency of Oscillator 2, because then you can make that sync sound go with the attack of the note. For instance, gow, 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 that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I can't do that on this subsequent 25, but if you had a semi-modular setup like the Matriarch or something, or if you have a modular setup, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. And so when you brought up sync to me, the first thing I said was, oh, like Unison.
No,
you're
not like
no,
Unison.
Completely different. But now actually hearing you explain it, I get the difference now, because you're actually changing the waveform.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't understand that concept previously.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Whenever you have a way to change the waveform, especially dynamically while you're playing, that really adds a neat element to the sound. You get that dynamic sound and a lot of motion in there, and that really gets me going. So.
Yeah, and it's making me think that the sounds and the timbres are definitely similar to what we experienced when we were doing amplitude or AM modulation. And so I know with the AM modulation, it's really dependent on your fundamental frequencies. So when you're playing stuff that's like slightly out of tune, it makes like a real jarring difference and doesn't sound as great. So I'm thinking Oscillator Sync, in addition to amplitude modulation, has got to sound pretty great.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get that edgy and metallic thing altogether. But the beauty of sync as compared to AM or FM in the same kind of way is that the sync is still a pure frequency. That waveform is changing, but if you look at the frequency of it, it's boy, I'm having trouble explaining this well. With AM, you're going to get a lot of crazy harmonics, and it's going to make it real metallic sounding and real burbly and gritty and granular. And with sync, you don't get that. You get more just the aggressive, edgy sound, but it's still of that same tone. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. It's still going to be real tonal. So it's a real handy thing, and some synths do it really cool. I'd love the sync sound on the Roland JX8P, for instance. Yeah. And there are a lot of records that use that kind of sound, and so it's a neat effect.
Interesting. And so now I'm thinking, I want to think kind of like, I wonder what the first synthesizer with sync was. If that was something that's kind of been around from the beginning of synthesis, or if it came later. Is there sync on the Model D?
No.
No sync on the Model D?
But there is on the MIDI Mini that we have.
Okay.
So,
yeah. And that's essentially the same circuit board, huh?
Right, but when they rack mounted the Mini Moog, they added these features, and it's not a hard thing to add, I think. So, but as far as the first synth that had it from the factory,
well, if any of y'all know out there, let us know in the comments below, because I'm definitely interested.
Yeah,
I love understanding like the historical context of
too.
these things. You know?
Yeah. So let's tackle another oscillator topic, and that is DCOs compared to VCOs. In a way, it's sort of the same thing, because a DCO is telling your waveform exactly when to start, the same way that sync does. I mean, it's apples and oranges, but they're sort of connected in that way. But first, let's imagine a regular VCO. And the way a VCO works is, we'll get a little technical here, you have a capacitor, in a lot of cases, a capacitor that is charging up. And so you're applying electricity to it, that capacitor is charging up, the voltage is going up, and then you short out the capacitor, it discharges immediately, and then starts the cycle over. It charges up again, then you short it out. That's how you make a sawtooth wave in the analog world. And a lot of synthesizers will start with that sawtooth wave, and then when you have a setting for a triangle or a sine wave, for instance, it's using a wave shaper circuitry to take that sawtooth wave and make it into the sine wave or a square wave or something like that. It is all basically built on that sawtooth in a lot of cases. So you have a voltage or you have an amount of current that's charging this capacitor up, and it gets to a certain voltage, goes back down, does it up again, goes back down, and that's what makes your sawtooth wave. And that's all done analog. The problem with, the problem or the beauty of VCOs is what?
The warmth. It's that little bit of instability and the little bit of variation. That just kind of it adds a nice thickness, but also texture. You know, I think your ears at a certain point, you know, they don't like things that are terribly stagnant. And I've always, you know, kind of heard like where there's silence, there is no life. So it's like something that's kind of like jarring and unsettling. So having these like little micro differences. It really fattens up the sound and the tone.
So imagine this. Imagine playing like a sawtooth wave on a Mini Moog and sustaining that for 3 minutes and being in the same room doing nothing. And then imagine doing the same thing on a DX7 and sustaining it for 3 minutes. It'd be I think, a remarkable difference because
totally different experience.
The Mini Moog might get annoying after 3 minutes of just one constant pitch, but the DX7 is so perfect that it's going to sound like, I don't know. I remember those Christmas cards that you open and they go beep 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 beep. You know, the little beepy noise playing the sound, and it's just so monotonal, perfect, bleepy sounding, and
glass-like is something that I've heard. There's another tone that I'm looking for in the back of my head, but we all know what we're talking about.
It's just too pure and perfect. And so, when you stack two oscillators or more that are analog, and you get those subtle differences and things are swimming around just a little bit, it really gets organic and lovely sounding. Whereas the DX7 will not.
We've extolled the praises of VCOs. Let's talk about some of the things that make them problematic.
Okay. Well, okay. The things that give them their beauty also give them the problems. It's a blessing and a curse. The curse is that the oscillators drift and they go out of tune, and especially with heat, as your synthesizer heats up, it changes tune. In fact, any analog synth, if you're going to calibrate it, they say turn it on and let it sit 15 minutes before you do anything. And if you have a analog synth and turn it on and start playing immediately, you'll hear those oscillators just all over the place as they start to settle down. So that is the problem with oscillators of the analog realm. And so in the early 80s, I believe, people started experimenting with digitally controlled oscillators. They're still 100% analog, the oscillating part. It's just that now, instead of having a control voltage that says, all right, you charge up for this length of time, and then you discharge, and then you charge up, and then you discharge, now you have an integrated circuit, for instance, that's saying, all right, I'm going to start counting when you press the key, and I'm going to count to 18,643, and then I'm going to start over, and I'm going to count to 18,643 again, and then I'm going to short you out. And so it makes the exact same wave, sawtooth wave. It just does it in exact increments. So the tuning is stable. And so DCOs, they don't wiggle around like the analog oscillators as much.
A little bit more stiff, is how I would describe it.
Yeah, they still sound great. Juno 106, wonderful sounding keyboard.
And then so you kind of took the words out of my mouth, because I was going to say, all right, your DCOs are kind of stiff. What do? Throw some chorus on it. It solves all your problems,
And it's a one oscillator synth. You can make some beautiful sounds with a one oscillator synth going through a chorus. So.
And I think at least in the synthesizer community, from what I've experienced, it's very easy to get caught up on nomenclature and like, oh, it has to be a VCO, or oh, it has to be a DCO, or two oscillators are better than one, three oscillator. When you think of like how glorious a memory Moog is, three oscillator per voice, but I think it's good to reserve judgment on a synthesizer until you spend some time with it. You know?
And they all serve different purposes. I mean, you're not going to do string pads with a Mini Moog because it's monophonic. But for bass sounds, lead sounds, it's incredible. Certain things do certain things well. So. I remember when we had a Leslie that was fixing to go out, and it was giving us a little bit of a headache, and you hooked up, I think we were running the DX7 through it. And the organ patch on the DX7 through a Leslie, I think it sounded fantastic. Oh yeah.
Did it sound like a Hammond? No, but it definitely sounded very special. And I was like, whoa, okay, that, it kind of really freshened my perspective on FM synthesis. When we talk about something maybe being stale or digital or glassy, context has a lot to do with that.
Sure. Oh, well, that's a good point. I'll give you two examples that pop into my mind immediately. Greg Hawkes of the Cars and his Korg 70 or 700.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff. If you play just that one line or just isolate that one sound, it's like, that is really just a, there's nothing special at all about that sound. But in the context, and what he was playing was brilliant in my mind. And the same thing, some Steely Dan stuff, or Donald Fagen, the Nightfly album. Sounds like some FM stuff that's just so clean and pristine and just, on its own, I would think it's not so great. But in the context of that, it helps make that one of the best albums ever recorded, in my opinion. So yeah, it's all about context.
Yeah.
And we're in the context of these new succulents, so it gives our podcast
more life,
more life, more elegance, more inherent value. So it's all about the context. So one other thing related to oscillators, let's talk a minute about glide.
Okay.
Equals portamento. Those terms are synonymous. And also glissando, which is a pretty unusual thing. But glide, let's... Glide just takes your control voltage. Each key sends out a control voltage to your oscillator and says, play a C. No, now play a E. Now play a D sharp. What glide does is it makes that control voltage a little drunk and is a little slow reacting and says, play a C. All right, now play E, but get there kind of slowly. And it just puts a lag on the control voltage. And wherever it's going, it takes a little more time to get there, and that's what gives you that glide. And one thing I like to do with glide is sometimes I play the glide knob, so that only certain notes in what you're playing do it. You can just throw it in there on certain notes, and it's a nice little technique. So I like playing the knobs as much as I like playing the keys.
Anytime I hear glide, my mind automatically goes to 303. I think that's something that's along with the squelchy filter, but just that glide.
Yeah.
And not having it on every step.
Right.
Having that little bit of difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of exactly the same thing. So it really adds a neat nuance to your performance. And the really unusual one that's related to glide is glissando. And technically, I guess in orchestral terms or whatever, a glissando means you go from one note to another by means of all the notes in between. So if I was going to do a glissando from C to G, I would go
chromatically.
Do that on a much faster scale. And some synthesizers actually do that. So you can play a low C, and then you can play a high C with glissando on, and it'll go right up that chromatic scale, and it's really cool. The CS80 does that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, very few synthesizers do it. I came across another few recently that did, and I can't remember what they are, but I promise you they're few and far between.
I know the Dcos 110F. Off the top of my head, just because that's one that I've been pining after. But yeah, that has glissando. It's very. I wouldn't say the Dcos version. It's like very stepped and like digital sounding almost.
Well, I mean that's what glissando is. It's very stepped and. But it's a neat effect. We used it in our CS80 Synth Wizards episode. There's a little piece in there, and I guess we'll throw it in so you can hear what it sounds like. But to do it in a polyphonic way is like, wow, that's a neat effect. I really like it. So, more fun with oscillators. Okay, so let's move on to just kind of a topic that you brought up the other day that came up in the course of doing normal business is out of stock parts. And
Oh yeah. Well, okay. I think the reason I brought it up was because we actually had received an email. If you can't find a part on our website or you click on it and it says out of stock, usually there's going to be a spot for you to leave your email address, and you will be notified once we do get it in stock. You really have to understand, though, once again, context is everything. Some of these buttons and knobs haven't been made in 20, 30, 40 years, and we really do try our best to source modern day equivalents if we can.
Or original used ones.
But that means having to track down that specific synthesizer, and absolutely making sure that it's not better served in the showroom. So, if we can give a synthesizer a second lease on life and put it in the hand of someone who's going to create music with it, that's generally what we're going to do.
Yeah. But if they're too far gone, if we buy a synthesizer and it's not working and we open it up and the main board's gone, for instance, then we're not going to be able to bring that back to life if it's a rare vintage thing. And so, in those sorts of instances, we'll part it out and we'll have bits and pieces like that.
Yeah.
But we do try to remanufacture some of these. But that's a big investment. And we can only do so many.
And I think also to a certain extent, some people might have this concept that we're like a multi-million-dollar company with like manufacturing facilities and plants all over and mover and maker and shaker of things, in which we aspire to that definitely. But we're a small crew here. It's a mom and pop shop, definitely very family oriented, and we try to just make the most of our time.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to King Solomon things and tasks, but so the email had said, what was it? It was, your expected arrival date was 12/31. Why do you keep moving it? Because a month ago it was a different date. And
it's just we're at the whim of the manufacturers.
Yeah, and especially with COVID, that we started seeing the effects of COVID in our supply chain this time last year. It was literally late December, early January, before the lockdowns were even happening in the United States. We were already, some of our stuff was a month behind, and we're kind of living our regular, everyday, idealistic life, and like, what? Coronavirus? What's that?
Well, a lot of stuff comes from China, and they were the first hit. So yeah. But we do our best to get all this stuff in stock. And a few points I'd like to make. One common question, people will say, "Oh, you don't have it in stock. Do you know where I can get it?" Well, if we knew where we can get it, we'd get it.
And we would make it available.
Yeah, I mean, we really go to great lengths to get these parts, and so if someone else has it, then there's got to be a place to get it, and we're going to get it, or I don't know. We generally don't know of anywhere else to get it.
And I mean, I even emailed you, it was like last night at midnight, and it was like, I get excited when I see weird potentiometers on eBay, and I'm like, is this a part? Is this, can we get this? Make it available?
And we'll follow up and see if that part is available, and if it works with these old vintage synths, we'll test it out and get it on our site.
Yeah.
But another thing, I remember our website now is a little better for this, but it used to be that you'd look at the listing of parts and then you'd see what you want and you'd click on it and say, oh, it's out of stock. Well, how about this part? And you click on it, well, that one's out of stock too. And people would say, well, why do you even list parts that are out of stock? But right now, the reason is because we want our site to be an excellent reference. If we don't have this potentiometer, for instance, we still want to show you a picture of it, and we still want you to see that, all right, this is a 50 kb pot, and it's a slide pot that's 30 millimeters long or whatever.
And so, I will say, because I get this question all the time too, the picture you see is the item that will ship. It's...
Well, it might not be the exact...
not that one.
Individual pot, but it's going to be that exact...
Yes.
That exact item. Yeah.
We get this question a lot with like contact strips, where people are like, I'm not sure if it's the same contact strip, it's not listed. But if you look at the contact strip that you have and you compare it to the one on the website, you can usually tell where the nibs line up, how many carbon contacts it has on it, things of that nature.
Yeah, and if you can't, if you have a part and you're not sure if it's the exact thing or not, take a picture of it, mail it in, and we'll help you out. So, all right, so let's just cover a couple of new things real quick.
One more thing on that, just because it's in the same vein. The probably second most common question: you're out of this part. Do you have another part that will work for it? I'm missing my screen. Do you have another screen that'll work? If we had another screen that would work for it, we would list it. I guarantee you.
And there are some parts on our site that say, this is out. If this part is out of stock, click here, and this other part will work, except that it's
a different color,
lighter gray or something. So, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about some new stuff. One new thing, this new shirt.
Yeah.
Lord, forgive me for all my synths. This is a fun one. So we're getting these going. If you need one of these, just go to our website and click on the apparel tab. OP6 from Korg, rolling in now.
I'm really excited
cool
about
keyboard.
that one.
Yeah.
I came in the other day to play around on a Minilog XD, which I really enjoyed. My favorite part of it was the sequencer, and when I read the specs of the OP6 and realized it was the same sequencer on steroids from the XD, I was like, I can't wait for that to be in our showroom.
Yep. So if you need an OP6, give us a holler. And then I just wanted to mention a couple of projects that I'm so excited about, and other people are as well. The Melotron, you might have seen that in our Synthomania podcast. It's now fixed. It's now working. That'll be up on our website for sale soon. And the other one, the Kinetic Sound Prism.
Yeah.
We are digging into that one, and it's actually had electricity applied to it now. Just the power supply, I guess.
We've made a lot of leeway on it, a lot of progress, and I am just so taken back and amazed at this is one man's vision, and this was his dream, and what he was able to accomplish, and it's for the most part it's very clearly laid out. So I'm really excited to hopefully get it making some sound. Ron has been studying the schematics, which in their own right are a work of art. Just beautiful, large, hand-drawn schematics. So many props to Ron, because he's really been digging into that and trying to understand a lot of its concepts.
Yeah, and many props to Jim Stevenson Jr. who made this thing. It is really an amazing piece of gear. There are two that exist in the world, and we've got one of them here, and it'll be the subject of a Synth Wizards episode as about us obtaining it, traveling to get it, getting it going, and hopefully at the end, playing it and making some sound. So, some exciting stuff happening.
Definitely.
So, all right, so this wasn't such an unlucky episode. We made it to the end. So. Hope you did as well, and we'll see you on the next episode. Until then, modulator.